Good morning, everyone. This is Allison Pulowski here with K-Rise Systems. Thank you for joining us for our Low Code and JDE Orchestrator, the perfect match for mobile and web applications webinar. Grant Smith will be leading this webinar along with Suman Prasad for a demonstration. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, please look to the right at the bottom. There is a chat feature and you can ask any questions during the webinar. We will try and get to them during the webinar. If we cannot, however, I will reach out to you at the end. And with that, I will turn it over to Grant.
Thanks, Allison. Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon for those on the East Coast. And thank you for attending. Let's talk about what we're going to go over today. Hopefully you guys can see all my slides. Looking at the roadblocks to custom development and where we stand today, talking about the options for tapping in and getting to JDE data and JDE logic. We'll talk about what we offer as part of that solution. We'll talk about what to look for in a partner. Then I'll pass it over to Suman, who will do a live demonstration. We should have time for Q&A at the end. So with that said, where do we sit in this innovation cycle? A lot of people have back-end ERPs like JD Edwards, and they're looking to create custom systems. How can they get through it, and what are the roadblocks? And there's usually mainly two. It's the complexity of integration. How can I get through into my ERP knowing the data will remain clean and clear, as well as what we like to call the paradox of choice. And that's building the front-end applications. And what I mean when I get to that is, starting with the complexity of integration, JDE is a very mature system. And if you don't know exactly what you're doing, well, this picture below can kind of look like what you're staring at. The experts can get through it. Those who train well can get to it easily. But for the average person, the average developer, it can be incredibly complex. And the paradox of choice on the other end of building these applications, building the front end, is there is so much out there. So how do I choose, and how do I know if I've chosen correctly? And to get through those pieces can be huge hurdles in order to build even the simplest application. So let's talk about those. We're going to talk about each individually, and we're going to start with the complexity of integration. And let's look at this from a JDE perspective. What are the options now for integrating to JD Edwards? Let's look at the pros and the cons of the three main ones that exist. We're going to talk about two today during the demonstration itself. So the first piece being, I can just directly access the database, right? What are the pros of direct database access? It is great for queries. It's much easier to run a query if you can access directly, and you can write any application you can. But the cons are you have to recreate everything. And that's where that chance for failure goes up exponentially. So it does work well for some things, but if you're doing a transactional application, going directly against the database has a lot of risk involved, and it's something that can probably be avoided at all costs. The second piece being the master business functions, the MBFN. So what's nice about these is you don't have to worry about the logic, and if you use them today, and we do in our systems and some of the projects we do, it can work really well. But there are cons to these. There is a lot of rigidity to them. Master business functions require specific fields. Some of these fields you might not want to put in your application, but you were forced to because of that. There is a long list of business functions, somewhere in the low 4 figures. And knowing all of them is critically important, and not only knowing them, but potentially knowing the business functions that they call. So it's not just using one, you could be using 2 and 3 and 4 to do a single record insert. Understanding all of that takes a lot of work, and they're not the best documented product that JD Edwards has ever put out. We work with these all the time. It can be difficult for the average developer to use. And if you're going to use the BSSC, which is a specialized piece of master business functions that generate SOAP, there are some other specialized skills involved. It does help. There are pros to it, but you need to know a little more than perhaps you should, and it doesn't take the complexity away as much as our next option, which is Orchestrator. And part of the reason I'm sure a lot of you are here today, we're going to show this as well. pros of Orchestrator. You have complete control of the information you insert and display in a custom application. And total fidelity, since you're using the system as it exists, you know all the logic will be there, you know all the validations will be there, and none of that rigidity of business functions. Now the cons are, you have to be on 9.2, and you have to have the AIS server, which does require some experience. And last but not least, it can be somewhat difficult to install and configure. But once you get on that, using that as an integration pipe can be liberating, really liberating. Before we go further, I do want to say this as a caveat. Our software supports all three options. We even support the Z files if that's necessary, and we're going to use two of those options in our demonstration today. So if you're not on 9.2 yet, even if you have a plan to get there, but you need to develop applications today, we can still help you. And when you get to 9.2, we can either rewrite them or you can just go on using them the way they are now and write new applications with Orchestrator. So let's get to the Orchestrator piece. I just have a couple screenshots to show this to you if you've never seen it before. This is the main page of Orchestrator, and what you're building in Orchestrator is called a service request. And if you can see my mouse, I'm circling that now. And the service request is the recording that you're making for any part of the JDE application. So if I hit this service request button and I pull myself onto any screen within Edwards, and you guys should all recognize this screen, all I need to do is go to this drop down and hit the record or process button. When I record that process, it records every single keystroke, and you can see it's recording because it's highlighted in red. And then when you stop the recording, what ends up happening is it creates a RESTful endpoint for you. This is a list of the RESTful endpoints we've made in the last couple of days. Once you have that RESTful endpoint, you can do anything you want with it. It is just a RESTful service and a JSON object for you to use. So that's how easy Orchestrator, once you get it up and running, it is to use, and it is to build a custom service that you can leverage to build new custom applications with total confidence that the data going into and out of your system is going to be clean. And that's really the point, is how well Orchestrator lowers the risk of building these applications. So there's that one half, the complexity of integration piece. So I feel like Orchestrator takes that a great step forward and allowing you, as a company who potentially wants to innovate or build custom applications, the capability within Edwards to make that easy to get the data at least out of the system. So let's talk now about that paradox of choice. Where do we sit with that? When I've built my orchestration, now I want to build a mobile application. Now, if you brought 6 consultants into a room, you'd probably hear 6 different responses on what languages I should use to build that application. And the third person says, well, the PHP and jQuery, and the fourth says C#, Ajax, and Swift, and the fifth says Angular, and the sixth says these other things. And all we end up doing on the other side is taking all of the risk we just mitigated and bringing it to our world, especially if you build multiple applications on multiple technology stacks. Sure, the data going into and out of Edwards is great, but you have a maintenance nightmare on the front end now. So what can be done to mitigate that piece? And that's where we, as a vendor, come into play. And if you haven't heard of EASYProcess from KRISE, it has been the platform that is the bedrock of all the applications we've built over the last 15 years as an organization. It was constructed to take the pain out of developing applications. So what can we build with KRISE? So it starts with systems that humans interact with. I want to build web and mobile applications. All right, and then we go to systems that machines interact with, to building headless applications, as well as robust workflow for either internal or external applications in both. All of this, though, and this is important, requires no coding. So people ask us all the time, can I take a business analyst or can I take someone with JDE skills, and upskill them without having to add new staff in our organization to develop these applications? And we think the answer is yes. With our training and professional services help and mentoring, we can get people up and off the ground in a matter of weeks. So how do we do that, and how do we go about doing this? So here in this slide, I have represented on the left-hand side, you're either running JD Edwards on-premise or JD Edwards in the cloud. Where does EASYProcess sit? EASYProcess is an entirely browser-based application. The IDE is browser-based. All of the management is browser-based, and the promotions are as well. So we sit in a cloud as well. Now, we can be on AWS or Azure or on-prem. But the first thing we do as an organization is we have a piece of software called the Easy Cloud Connector. And this is really important. What it allows us to do, it's a simple Java application. It allows us to not have to use VPN to connect to your system. You don't even need to give out credentials to KRISE, any user IDs and passwords. It locks your part down into a private cloud. But what it does for us, and what it does for KRISE EASYProcess developers, is it gives access to the database, Orchestrator Studio, the master business functions, and any other ancillary things you need, like email or your login authentication, so Okta or LDAP. All of that stuff becomes available for a developer to develop applications against your system. This allows you to keep all of the data that you want inside of Edwards, but still allow you to develop the applications that you're looking to develop without having to move anything around. So when I've locked this down, and what can I do next is build the applications I'm looking for. So I can either use business functions or Orchestrator, and I can start feeding the KRISE developers these endpoints, and they can start developing the mobile applications, the workflow applications, or potentially even the headless applications. So EASYProcess as a platform can be that single gateway for all the custom applications and the custom workflows you want to do, whether it's machine to machine or human to machine. And that's where we, I think, bring a tremendous amount of strength to the JD Edwards community, is keeping all of the data where you want it, but allowing you to build the applications you need to be competitive. So briefly about our architecture, and then I'm going to get into a little bit of how the application itself works before I hand it off to Suma. When we talk about our architecture, first we start is with your system. And this is a JD Edwards specific presentation, but we work with virtually any COTS system as well as custom systems. And there's four main layers to our architecture. There's the data access layer, there's the logic, there's the interface design, and there's the execution layer. And if you notice, the data access and logic layers are the exact same color in this screen. I'll get to that in a second. But first, let's start with interface design. As I said earlier, our application is entirely browser-based. So when I'm designing a screen, this is what I'm looking at. So at the top here, I have a way to design the tables out. And if you've ever done an HTML screen, this should look very familiar. And on the bottom is all the actions I can do when I design a table. Button, breadcrumbs, images, hyperlinks, text boxes, labels, etc. When I want to move this, I can take something like a grid and then push this on here, and I can create a table. And you can see here, we can make this in any way you want. So even the other parts, I can put tables within grids and lists within tables, and even tabs over the side. This will work in any permutation you're looking for. You also have, in the design mode, how will this look on a phone? How will this look on a desktop? So while you're designing the application, you have automatic looks into, is the target a phone? Is the target a desktop? Is the target both? And I can develop the table accordingly. On the right-hand side of where I put all my properties, all of this is drag and drop, and all of it can be done and redone to your heart's content. The second piece being logic. So how do I put logic in our application? And this is important, even if you're using Orchestrator. If I'm developing a form, I want to validate that information before I put it into Orchestrator and make sure at least the cursory validations are taken care of, like fields not being blank and numeric fields being numeric. But how we do logic, if you've done workflow before, using our platform to do logic is a breeze. So this is how we create logic in our system. We have a set of services. Suman will go into a few of these during the demonstration. There's over 400 in here. The average developer needs to know between 8 and 10. But we have a lot that are one-off events, and we can go into detail with that as customers on board. But when I'm doing something, and I want to check out some logic on perhaps a table, I go look in my database services. I can then pull all these services up. I say, this is the JDE data. All I want to do is now, to get to that inquire, I can just drag that on the screen. Use an arrow to wire it together, and then I can add any other services I want and just put them in a linear format. Even binaries go in here. So I'm not writing code. I drag something on a screen, I put properties inside of it, and this takes care of all the logic for me. So instead of writing code, right, I can do this. Data access is virtually the same way. So if you understand how the process flow of an application is supposed to work, right, you can develop these applications. If you understand how I'm going to inquire against the database, you can develop these applications by dragging and dropping these services onto a screen. That makes us, right, much, much easier than hiring skill-specific people to do the same thing. So when we bring this all together, and I haven't talked about the execution piece yet, right, I have my design layer, and then my data access, and the logic sits in the middle. Now, when Suman is doing the demonstration, what you'll notice is we can go between design and data access and logic just with a click of a button. But they are all uniquely separated in development and in production. All of this together, though, brings up our execution. And that's the forms that you're building, whether it be web, mobile, whether it's using Orchestrator or doing direct queries or master business functions. All of this comes together. I haven't written a line of HTML or JavaScript or jQuery. I haven't had to resize screens to fit for multiple devices. This is what developing an application should look like these days. And I think we do an excellent job of that. I hope you see that in the presentation itself. So what Orchestrator has done, right, is eliminated that complexity of integration roadblock. And I think what we offer allows us to take that paradox of choice away and give you a development platform to develop the applications you need without having to constantly look at what is new and what is next in the IT marketplace. I mean, even Gartner said IT chases more trends in the fashion industry. And I think that's true, but sometimes you just need to draw a line in the sand and say, we're going to use a tool to get this done faster. So a couple things, and then I'm going to pass it over to Suman. There are a lot of vendors who are claiming to do what we do. So a couple of questions you should ask when you're looking for a development partner to help you. Right? Can I write applications without constantly changing our technology stack? Right? Can someone, and this is important, can someone who's already employed in-house learn this? So I don't have to hire new people, find and hire new people to do these things. Right? Does our technology partner have JDE experience? Important questions that you should think about when you're looking to build these applications. Are they JDE certified? And can I keep my data in JDE, or do I have to move it to someone else's cloud? It's a critical question to ask, and I think you should if you're looking around. And can this help with non-JDE applications? And we absolutely can. We've helped a lot of companies get rid of Lotus Notes applications, SharePoint applications, decompose old VB6 applications as well. One last piece before the Suman gets started, something I want you guys to consider, just on the short end, is to think about, while Suman's developing this application in less than 30 minutes, all of the forms that sit in your organization that don't need to be there anymore. All of the spreadsheets that you have in your world. And the worst thing ever, all of the access databases and access systems that I could put in as a new system in JDE Edwards, as a mobile or web app, and make all of our lives and all of our data cleaner and easier, and using that to create these applications. So much so we can create forms to simplify JDE Edwards processes, and they can live inside of JDE Edwards. So even if you have complicated processes with Orchestrator, you could streamline them and create a new front end for the JDE Edwards user on a daily basis to make their lives easier. Now with that said, I'm going to pass it over to Suman, and Suman is going to do the presentation and the live demonstration. There you go. You should be presented, Suman. Take it away.
Thank you, Grant. Hello, everyone. So I want to start with showing off, like Grant was saying, we have some recording done, a couple of orchestrations created which will be part of the demonstration. And these are the service requests. They end up with these. Let me log into the Orchestrator client, and they end up with two different orchestrator here. We call that get address book info. Takes the input as an address number, and if I run it, you get the address information from JDE Edwards. The other one is the update. So in the update, I'm going to copy this, and in the update, I'm going to pass the JSON input. And here I'm going to pass the alpha name, that is line 1, and the address number, this, and say I want to change this to web. Say I want to change this to webinar, so I'm going to run this. So I just ran this, and if I go here, do a find, and see my address number, sorry, the name changed to webinar. That was done through a recorded orchestration for Orchestrator for address book update. So the demo will be, using these to do an inquire and an update. Next thing I want to show is that before I, go into start building an application, I just want to show you the one that is already pre-built, so that it will put things in a context, and you can see what I'm going to be building. So I'm going to go in here and copy the URL that I already have done, and I'm going to start a new window here. And this is an application already built. We call the sales rep portal, and I'm going to log in as sales rep. So this is a sales rep logging in. He sees his customers. So anything that's tied him to based on his reason code, he's looking at those customers. He can look them up and say, okay, I want to look at 4242, and there you go. Oh, show me all the orders for 4242. So there you go. These are the order details, and here's the, if you scroll down, it says all the different statuses, the dates, which basically get converted from Julian to month, day, year format. Going back, he can do a search on this, as you see, and then you can click here to pull this up. Now here I'm running, we ran the orchestrator I just showed you to bring this information. And then I'm going to change this back to capital system now, do an update. Now I'm calling an orchestrator to update this. And if I go back to JDE Edwards again, do a find, I just updated that with an app. Now I showed this in a browser window, but I also want to show this in a mobile window. So let's convert this into a mobile view. So this is how it will look like if you are opening this from a phone. And right here, the same thing. I can search on this. I can click on this. Everything is, as you see, the formatted, the form factor, and everything changed to the mobile view. So it's all tablet or iPhone or any Android phone ready. So this is the application that I'm going to be building from ground up. So I'm going to close this window now, and I'm going to go, and this is a login to the platform. This is in the cloud, our development platform. And I'm going to log in right now as a system admin. This gives me access to all the tenants. And the tenants that I want to work in is webinar October 22. I created this tenant just for this demo. So I will click on the tenant login, and I'll use my log user ID. And this basically takes me to this particular tenant. Tenants can have multiple applications. And my job right now is to create a new application. That's the goal of this webinar. I'm going to call that sales rep portal and go and click add. So it says you will receive an email when the application is ready. It takes a couple of, a minute or so to create the application behind the scene. We copy all the metadata and everything is needed to run an application. We also copy pre-built header and footer, so you don't have to build that, but you can always go and change it whichever way you want. So at this moment, I'm going to click on sales rep portal, and now what it takes me the IDE of the platform for this particular application, sales rep portal. In this IDE, I can create the web pages, I can create processes, workflows, REST APIs, anything that you want to develop, you do from here. This is one place, this is all browser based, and it's all drag and drop, as you will see. So the first thing I want to do as a part of this building exercise is create a new web page called My Accounts. This is where when you log in as a sales rep, you look at your customers, your accounts. I'm going to say add a new web page with template. By doing with a template, I'm automatically saying that, okay, pick the header and footer for me, which is already pre-decided. I don't have to worry about header and footer then. So I'm going to add a new page with template, and I'm going to name it My Accounts. So my web page is created. And then I see it shows in my list here. So I'm going to click on the design. Design is one piece that, as Grant was showing, is the UI builder, where it's all drag and drop, table, grid, everything. I'm going to do that right now. Of course, the first thing before I even start building a tables or grid or list, I need to get the data from JDE, from your database, from your tables. So I'm going to add a new data source. That's our way of saying that to get the data. This is like a one place where I'm going to put all the logic in. The gear here, when I click this, takes me to the one that logic builder that Grant shows, where you can drag and drop. There are 400 services, Grant said, but you normally use maybe 8 or 10. My first goal is to go and get data from JDE. This is where we are connecting, directly going to JDE and getting the accounts. That's one of the 3 ways that Grant said we connect to JDE. So I'm going to drag and drop JDE data, and I'm going to join this here. And then I'm going to double click. So here I have Query Builder. Query Builder is an easy way, drag and drop way to create a query versus writing it up. So here, as you see, I can start searching for something. I can say 4211, and there's my sales order file. I can say F0101, and this is my address book master. So for this first screen, I need this table. So I'm going to double click on this one. As you see, it already wrote the query for me. So I'm going to use the save and close, and my file name is already selected as F0101. The next goal is to set up the keys to this file, which basically ties a record or accounts to a particular sales rep. So here I'm going to use ABN. I'm going to add a new key here. And the logic that I'm going to use, how a sales rep gets his account, is using a category code. You all know that in JDE an address book can have multiple category codes. And so many times you'll use one of those category codes to join, to assign a sales region. So that's what we are using. This AB AC02 is a sales region. So I'm going to tie this with sales region here of the logged in user. As you see, this is EP user property sales region. So whenever a person logs in, like a sales rep, when I logged in the beginning of the demo, there's a number that gets assigned to that person, and then that number is going to tie to ABAC02, and that's how you get your account. After that, I'm going to go to the results, and you see all these results are showing up. I'm going to drag and drop here. So it creates an UI for me to select all the nodes. I can drop individually each of them, but this is a very good, easy to use tool if I want to add more than one. So I'm going to use alpha name and address book number and say add these 2 nodes. So as you see in my results, it's added 2 nodes, alpha name, address book number, and alpha name. That completes the my exercise of creating the data source and the logic behind it. So I go back to my UI designer. Here, back here, I can look at the data source here again. This is a text representation of the logic that I just built. So right from here, I can see that, okay, there's an inquiry, there's these two fields. So I can actually drag and drop directly from here and say, okay, I want to create a new list. So I will say, okay, I will use these, and I'm going to name this address number, and this will be name. And this field, I don't want to display as a label. I want to display as a hyperlink. The reason is that way we can easily use that as a link to pull up more information and update, like I showed in the demo. So I'm going to do a create list here, and by clicking that, as you see, it automatically created a list for me. As you see, this is the header, and we show 2 rows here just to show the alternate rows. And this is the alpha name, address book number, and the alpha name. I can actually, at this point of time, click on the desktop view and quickly see that, okay, how my screen looks like. So that's, as a developer, it gives you, a quick browser access right there without trying, you don't have to log in or something. Right here, you can see, oh, this looks good. You can also go to the phone view. So it also does a form factor behind the scene and tells you that, okay, if this were to be pulled in a phone, this is how it will look like. One more thing I want to do before I finish my account is the search. You saw that I was able to search this using the address number. So I'm going to add a new row here. And inside that row, I'm going to add a new table. And the first field I want to add is a text box. This is the text box that I'm going to use to type my address book number in. So I'm going to put search in here. That's the name of this field now. And the title of this field will be called search. Then I'm going to use a control called button. This button is going to do the find. So I'm going to use the text find here. And I'm going to name this button. So the name of this button is find. So now I have a search and find. If I again quickly jump to the view, I can see that, okay, my find is here. But there is no logic associated with it. I just added the UI part. So we do complete 2 more steps for this filter to work. Okay, the first step is I have to go back to the data source and tell the data source that, okay, the inquiry that I did, it has one more key now, which is coming from the web input. So I'm going to add one more key here, go to the column, and say that, okay, address book number equal to the value that user is typing. So I can go to the web here, and you see I have this field here, search. That's the one I just added. I'm going to drag and drop this. So but just by adding this key, and I'll do one more step here, I'll say ignore blank as true. So basically I'm saying that if I don't type anything, then ignore this query. Ignore this key criteria. So now, as you see here, my criteria is set for another key saying that, okay, a search box is tied to the address book number. The second step I need to complete is what happens when I click the find button, because it won't do anything unless I tell you to do something. So I click on this button, and now find is where I can write more logic. So here, all I want to do is that whenever I click on the find button, I want to run the data source. That's the way of telling to go and fetch the record again. So I'm going to say that whenever I click this button, run this data source. So with these steps, I have completed the first part of the demo, is where sales rep can log in and look at my accounts. So I'm going to start a new incognito window here, and actually going to log in and see how it looks like. So for that, I need my URL. I just created an application. So I can go and look at and copy this URL and go to my incognito window. And here is my application. So this is a new application. It looks very similar to what I showed in the beginning, but I built this like right now in 5 to 10 minutes. And I'm going to log in now as sales rep. And there you go. Just by logging in, it's sending me to this page. This is what I have just built. I can try to do a find here, do a 4242, and this is the search on capital system 4242. So that was the part 1. The part 2 is where I'm going to build and use orchestrator. So let's move to the part 2. And I go back to IDE, which is our development environment. I select my application. I go back to my accounts, and you see that, okay, I already have this link, but this link is not right now doing anything. So I will start programming this link to make it call an update window. First thing I will say this link that, okay, it should open a window. So that's right there, yes. The next thing I will do that it should open a widget when I open a window. And then you say, okay, what is a widget? I did web page is very obvious. But what does what does a widget do? A widget is where basically it's a page without header and footer. If you want to do something, you want to pull up a model window. You don't want to put header and footer in there. That's just not the right UI practice. So for that we have a concept called widget. So before I go, let's create a widget. So I have my account web page. I'm going to add new widget, and I'm going to name that account info. So I'm creating a new widget. Now I can go back to my accounts and tie that link with this widget. So now this part is done. Now these links also need to pass the address book number as a parameter. So I'm going to pass the address book number as a parameter to the model window. So again, it might be getting a little technical here, but when I start showing the application, I'll come back and explain this again. So I have completed the part of linking hyperlink to a model window. Now let's go back and design the account info now. So I click on the design. So the first part here is go and define the query string, and that is ABAN8. That's basically, by doing this, I am creating a communication between the parent and a child window. When you click a link, hyperlink from a parent window, a child needs to understand that, okay, it's being called for a certain address book number. So that's what happened when I did this parameter ABAN8 and I set up this query string. That's the communication you establish between parent and child window. Then I'm going to add a new data source, which I did before, so no, that's no different. Now here, I can still go to database and get my address book information to show to the user to update. But I don't want to do that. We created Orchestrator, so let's call Orchestrator here. So we use our REST APIs. Orchestrator endpoints are REST API, so I'm going to use a REST request service that we have. And I'm going to join this and go inside this one. So the URL will be your Orchestrator URL. I have that copied here. That's something you'll get from your CNC or your Orchestrator person, So I'm going to use this URL. The method will be post. The content will be, now content is something you can go and get it from here. I'm going to show you from the Orchestrator. Go to Orchestrator and look at the content. You can copy and paste your input or output from here. For the sake of the demo, I have just everything copied into my demo script. So this is my HTTP content. And in the content, I have the address number. So I'm going to pass address book number that the child window is receiving from the parent to the query string. So, and of course, you have to pass the username and password. You can encrypt or you can source code the password you save for your security. Then I'm going to do a projected response. And I'm going to go again copy and paste, which also you can copy and paste from your Orchestrator test run. With this in place, I'm going to go back to my account info, and I'm going to go here and see now it's sending me that your Orchestrator call returned these output. So I'm going to drag and drop this here now. I'm going to select all of this and I'm going to make this all as a text box so that I can edit them. I can put a better description here. Done. Create form. This time I'm creating a form, not a list. And And at the end of it, I'm going to add a button. Again, I'm going to name this button, say update. And right here in the logic, in this button, I can click, which basically takes me to the logic portion of the button. When I click the button, what will happen? Of course, I'm going to call REST API. Or I should say, I'm going to call the orchestrator to update. I'm going to drag and drop another API here. And this time, I'm going to tie this up with the URL for the update orchestrator. So again, you can copy everything from your orchestrator test runs, but I'm going to just use from my prep data. So I'm going to copy the URL here. The method is post. The HTTP content is going to be, you're going to pass basically all the data that you want to update. So here again, the address number is going to be the address number that I got from, the alpha name is going to be from my text box. The address line 1 is going to be from my text box. The city is going to be from my text box. And the state is going to be, as you see, I can just select this and double click here. It's very easy to add. I'm not typing anything, it's all drag and drop, double click, ready. So that's my input to update orchestrator. And then with this is done. I go back to Canvas and I will just say, I want to close this window when I'm done updating. So there is a service we have called, we call a set terminate action. You can use this service to terminate a window, a model window, a child window. And with this, my update part is done. So at that moment, my development for account info is done. So I'm going to go back and test that using the window that I created. So in this one, I'm going to do an inquire and do a 4 to here again and click on this. So now it's running the orchestrator and going to get me the data by calling the orchestrator. So it ran the orchestrator, which is the account, which is the address book info. And now I'm going to update this. So here by only clicking of the button, I'm calling now the update orchestrator. Now it's done, do a find, and there you go, my address is updated. Let's go to JDE Adverts. So I go to JDE Adverts, do a find again, and there is my web 123. So the both end of the orchestrator worked, the inquire and the update. I'm going to show this in the mobile window now. So let's open another window, and let's copy this URL, and let's paste and go. And let's change the view to a mobile browser. So if you are using a mobile browser, what I just did is that I basically pulled up the same screen in a phone browser, and I'm going to do a search. And same thing, I can pull this up. As you see, it's all a form factor for mobile. And I'm going to change this to mobile, do an update.
Maybe it's my phone. Are people saying anything?
Okay, so now I just updated, do a find, and I just did this update from a mobile browser. I go back to JDE Adverts, do a find, and there is your mobile. So that was the part 2, which is where we basically interacted with orchestrator, both inquire and update. Part 3 is I want to show some other part of the integration. Of course, I want to do some orders, but I also want to show some UDC and some date conversion, which is very important for JDE Adverts development. So for that one, I go back to my IDE again, and I go back to my accounts. This is the page I want to work on, and I will add a new column here, and I'm going to add another hyperlink here, and this time I'm going to call this hyperlink orders. And the name of the control, I also changed that to order from hyperlinks. Then I'm going to say that when I click this link, open a web page called orders, and of course I have to pass the parameter so that I know which address book number to do the order on. So I'm going to AVN8, equal to ABN8 here. So I just completed another link. If you go to the desktop view, you can quickly see that it's right there. Okay. Now I need to create a new web page called orders where this control will go. So I'm going to create a new web page with template, and I'm going to now name that orders. And the page is added. So I'm going to go to the design of this page. Again, the first thing I need to do is set up the query string ABAN8. Again, this is the communication. A calling page needs to tell the called page what the address book number to do the query on. So I'm going to add a data source, go back to data source, and again I'm going to do an inquire, find my JDE data, join it, double click, and pull the query builder. So here this time I want to go to order header, which is F4201, and order details, which is 4211. Again, these two tables are drawn here. Here I want to show one more thing, is that I can do a join from here. So I know that orders are joined between order number, order type, and order company. As you see, it did all the join statement below for you. If you are very good in SQL, you can write this up on your own, but it doesn't hurt to just have someone do for you. So query builder does exactly that. It basically types the query for you. The key for this is going to be the address book number. So I'm going to use the SHAN8, which is the order header address book number, and I'm going to tie that with the value that's coming from the calling web page, which is the address book number. And then the results, I'm going to drag and drop here, and I want to add address book document number. Then I want to add these are all header fields. Let's go to the details. Transaction date, which is my order date. Then I'm going to add item number, description, quantity order, and let's find the status. So I added like 5 fields: order number, next status, quantity order, 6 fields, transaction date, and item number. That is good. I'm good with the inquire now. I just got what I wanted. Now I'm going to go to the orders page here. And again, if you look at this, I have all these fields. I can drag and drop it in here now. And let's go to the order number. Put the order number here. Then add the item. See, whichever way I click in, that's the index it picks. So I can decide which way I want to display it. Description, quantity ordered, and status, and the date. Okay, so I'm going to create list, and those fields are added. Let's look at the transaction date. I know by default the text will come in Boolean format, so that's why we have what we call a value transformation. Value transformation, we have various rules, and these rules, like in this case, all I want to do is convert from JDE date. So I just converted the Boolean to JDE date, and the next status is going to come into a code, 3-digit code. So I can even convert that from, as you see, convert to UDC description, and then I do 40/80. That's the status active JDE common status UDC.
It's the next step in a process on the line.
Yeah, and then I do an add. So I did this value transformation. So with this, this view is ready. Let's go and test it. So I go to this screen again. Let's go to the browser view first. And let's go to the home page. Yeah, there's my orders. Let's search on 4242. And click on the orders. And there's my orders. And look at the status and the date. Properly converted to, proper description here coming from UDC and the date to the MD5 format.
Might be worth showing also what every list can do out of the box.
Yes, that's a good, see, out of the box, you already have the ability to download
any list to Excel.
And
you can sort on any column if you want to, as well as.
Yeah, I have a lot of data.
Oh, there's a lot of data. Okay. Select column.
And you can also select columns. Just wait for this to come up. I clicked the wrong button,
So what this allows you to do is select a column on live demo. Allows you to select a column, and it saves it on a per device basis. So you can put a large list on a screen, and if you have a mobile device and you only want to see 3 columns, you can choose those. And the next time you log into that mobile device, you'd only see the 3 columns you chose. Otherwise, you could see all of them.
Yes.
So those are all out-of-the-box list features that we have.
And one thing I want to show also is, you also have logs and everything, so at any point of time you can go and see, okay, what was the data source, did it run the query correctly? So you can pull up and you can see that all the query being run with the exact data and everything. It also gives you a timestamp, how long it took to run it. So it can help you troubleshoot any kind of performance issues you are having, not figuring out, okay, well, basically our processes and every logic that we are executing, we give you a very good log view for that. Yeah.
Okay,
no,
well,
that was the, of course, I can go back and show the same thing in the mobile view again.
Well, that's all right.
Yeah.
Well, we thank you. I'm going to make myself presenter one last time. And just to show you, to thank you, Suman, for putting that great demonstration together. Allison, are there any questions that have arisen from the presentation? Can you read them off to me?
Yes. So we had a question come in. How long would it take for a business analyst or a JDE developer to get up to speed on EASYProcess?
I think the best way to answer that is to talk about how we hire people. We have a full professional services team, and we hire kids straight out of college normally. So we take people with business analytics and sometimes computer science skills and teach them EASYProcess. So anyone who has an understanding of the JDE Edwards process flow would be well ahead of anyone we hire immediately. To take the training takes about 5 days. During the training, you're building production-ready applications. So I think you could have something up and running in a week and then be serviceable in 2, and expertise, always takes time. But it shouldn't be a month thing, it should be a week's thing.
Great. And then if I wanted to hold all updates from mobile apps from being inserted into JDE until it's reviewed, can I do that?
That's a funny question. You can, because we have a full workflow engine, so we can hold data into temp files and then build a review screen for people to accept or deny any request, and at that point in time, it'll be entered into Edwards. So that's certainly possible through our workflow.
Okay. Can I use device features on mobile apps if I'd like to?
Yeah, absolutely you can. You can do signature capture, you can take pictures, you can scan barcodes, you can use the phone, email, voice recording, etc. All those things are available. We have people receive good projects where they're taking pictures of damaged goods and sending them off to purchasing immediately.
You can also receive notifications.
And you can also, yes, we also do notifications.
Okay. And then what other databases do you support?
We support Oracle, SQL, and DB2. So if you're not just running JDE Edwards on SQL, we can certainly support that. Are there any other questions that have arisen?
I have one question here. Do you map to all the JDE environments, which is DB, PY, and PD? The answer is yes. Of course, I was using a demo environment, so I was changing everything. But every live, so I was actually using a standalone application. But every live install has all 3 environments, DB, QA, and PD, and they are tied to a respective JDE environments.
All right. Well, thank you. Is that all the questions?
That is all the questions.
Okay. Well, thank you for your time. And if there are any other questions come in, We'll be happy to answer them offline. If you'd like to know more, my contact information is on the screen. Feel free to reach out, grant.smith@krisystems.com, info@krisystems.com, or check out our website, www.krisystems.com. You all will be getting a recording of this presentation in the next day or two, and we look forward to your feedback. Thanks, everybody. Have a great afternoon.